High Hills on this beautiful, glorious morning. You know, sometimes when I come up here to Mount Davidson and I look out across the Bay Area, this beautiful sight with this glorious cross that's here, I'm reminded of the words that Billy Graham once said. He said, "The Bay Area is so beautiful, I hesitate to preach about heaven when I'm there." Welcome to this glorious Easter Sunday morning. I'd like to share some thoughts with you from God's Word on this resurrection morning about how we can turn death into life through the power of His resurrection. The tomb could hold Him no longer. Death is strong, but life is stronger. Stronger than the dark, the light. Stronger than the wrong, the right. Faith and hope triumphant say, Christ arose on Resurrection Day. Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus from the grave. It's a fact of history. But it's not only a fact of history, it's His story of the resurrection, repeating daily in the lives of us who are believers in Jesus Christ. In John chapter 11, Jesus said to Martha, just before He raised her brother Lazarus from the dead, He said, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die." Jesus said, "Do you believe this?" Here's the first thing I want to leave with you this morning on Easter Sunday. We can turn our deaths, not just our death, but our daily deaths, into life by having faith in His all-encompassing resurrected presence. It's there even if we don't think it is. Martha was in that space thinking Jesus missed His chance to solve her problem. The disciples were in the same place on Saturday, caught between the crucifixion on Friday and the resurrection on Sunday, having lost all hope of a miracle. Satan seemed victorious. The disciples became depressed. The fact is, Saturday is where most of us live. But Sunday's right around the corner. We face crushing circumstances that tell us God is not present. Life is not worth living, and nothing seems to go right for us. F.B. Meyer said, "Unbelief puts our circumstances between us and God, but faith puts God between us and our circumstances." God may change your circumstances, or simply, He may just change us. The truth is, He is there, and resurrection power is at work. You might have heard in the news just the other day, just a few days ago, the story of a great humanitarian missionary that's been caught in captivity for 6.5 years in East Africa by the name of Jeff Woodkey from California. He was released just a few days ago after being in captivity for 6.5 years. He was brutally tortured. He was inhumanely treated. He was fed just rice and bread twice a day. He was chained for 16 hours a day. He paced in his cell 8 hours a day in a small confined place, repeating the Psalms, holding on to hope. He was told month after month, week after week, year after year, you're going to be released in the next week. After hearing it countless times, he lost total hope of the false promises that his terrorists told him. He got so depressed, he thought of ending his life and quitting. He lost hope in God. But far across on the other side of the ocean, here in California, his wife did not give up hope. She continued to believe God. She continued to trust that God would deliver him. And just a few days ago, you might have saw it on the news, Jeff Woodkey was released by his captives. He said, as he came out in the news conference just on April 2nd, he said, God, it turns out, was busy answering my wife's unanswering prayers when I lost all hope and thought God no longer cared. God bent the will of nations and the powerful to bring me, a lowly sinner, from a living hell. God is here right now. He's amongst us, no matter how desperate our situation may be. We sing this song a lot down in the Tenderloin, where I spend most of my days working in that neighborhood. You are here moving in our midst. I worship you. You are here working in this place. I worship you. You are here turning lives around. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I can't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. God is always at work, whether we see it or we don't. He is with us. So let us shake off Saturday and put on Sunday and believe in the resurrection power to set us free. The second thing I want to leave with you is in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 7. Paul says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power, he's talking about the resurrection power, that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We can turn death into life when we depend solely on his resurrection power to work through us. Paul says we're just jars of clay, but in that jar of clay is a treasure, and that treasure is the resurrection power of Jesus Christ that operates through us to do what he can do that we cannot accomplish ourselves. I'm reminded of the great Chinese evangelist and preacher Watchman Nee. He tells a story of when he was out swimming in the river, and one of his colleagues began to drown, and amongst them was an expert swimmer. And Watchman Nee shouted to the expert swimmer, "Go save him!" And the expert swimmer just continued to tread water. Watchman Nee got so frustrated because he was far away, he shouted again, "Save him!" The expert swimmer just continued to tread water, watching the man drown. As the man lost all of his energy, he started to sink into the river. The expert swimmer took a couple swift strokes and was right there by his side and rescued him and saved him and took him to the shoreline. Watchman Nee went up to the expert swimmer and said, why did you wait so long?" The expert swimmer said, "You cannot save a fighting man. If I would have tried to save him, both of us would have drowned. I waited till he lost all of his strength, and then I saved him." When we come to the end of ourselves, when all of our power and strength is exhausted, when we are weak, then he becomes strong. The resurrection power delivers us and saves us as we depend solely on his work to work through us through his resurrection power. As I close this morning, I want to leave the last thought with you. Ephesians chapter 2, Paul, again, reflecting on the resurrection, he says, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace that you have been saved. Lastly, on this beautiful Easter morning, we can turn death into life by surrendering our sin-dead lives to his life-giving resurrection. My father, who's passed away, wrote a little tract many years ago. It said, "Millions now living are already dead." Someone once said, the only qualification for the gift of the resurrection is to be dead. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be good. You don't have to be wise. You don't have to be wonderful. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be dead. That is why Jesus said, you must be born again. And I want to share with you this morning that is one of the most freeing things that ever happens in a person's life, is when they receive Christ into their life to make them new on the inside. As we labor in the tenderloin, we thank God for all the services that are around us, through the city, and through nonprofits, and through others that are laboring tirelessly to help people on the streets. But we must be born again. That new living hope gives something on the inside that propels us forward. But it's up to us. It's our decision. As I close this morning, let me end with this story. There was a very old wise man in an African village who knew the answer to every question that the young boys would bring to him. One boy was quite tired of this old man and his witty answers. He decided to outsmart him. So one day he caught a butterfly and he cupped it in the palm of his hand and wrapped his hand around it and put his finger on the butterfly. He went to the wise man with the butterfly closed in his fist and asked the wise man, alive or dead? The wise man could not see what was in his hand. The boy said to himself, if he says it's alive, I'll crush the butterfly and show him that it's dead. If he says if it's dead, I'll release the butterfly and show him that it's alive. Either way, I will confound the wise man. The wise man looked at the boy's hand, and then he looked at the boy's face, and then he looked at the boy's hand, and then he said, it's up to you. This morning, as I close, will you accept Jesus and the power of his resurrection into your life and start this year by believing he can transform you? We can turn our deaths into life by having faith in his all-encompassing resurrected presence. We can turn death into life when we depend solely on his resurrection power to work through us. And lastly, we can turn death into life by surrendering our sin-dead lives to his life-giving resurrection and be filled with his light and his love and his life. God bless you. Christ is risen.